Hi, this is Rethik Sir, your biology SME. Welcome to the MEMONEET. Um, in the last video, we actually had a discussion on different ways, right? So in this video, we will actually look upon the pollination. So before going to the pollination, the basic thing is we need to know about pollen grains. So we have already discussed the structure of pollen grains, but I just want to discuss you in detail about the structure of pollen grains and how pollen grains are made of. Yeah. Coming to the pollen grains, we know that the pollen grains, right? So they normally represent what? They represent the male gametophytes, right? So pollen grains are something that normally represents what? It represents the male gametophytes. And generally, when I'm talking about the pollen grains, right? So the shape of the pollen grains are irregular, but generally, while we are saying, so we normally say them as spherical in shape. But shape of the pollen grain or size of the pollen grain, okay, it normally varies from species to species, but generally speaking, it is spherical in shape, which measures about 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter. Getting 25 to 50 micrometer in diameter. The pollen grains, basically, it has two layers. So if this is the pollen grain here, so it has two layers. So one is the hard, which is the outer layer is called as exin, and the inner layer, which is called as intin, right? So coming to the exin and intin, exin, which is the hard outer layer of the pollen grain, which is actually made up of sporopollenin. So what is the sporopollenin? It is an organic material, okay? So which is most resistant organic material. Sporopollenin is the most resistant organic material. So since exin, which is the outermost hard layer of the pollen grain, which is made up of the sporopollenin, and it is the most resistant organic material that we know. Why it is called as resistant organic material? Because it can withstand one is high temperature, then pH, strong acids, as well as alkaline content. Since they can withstand and it shows the resistant to these all things, so the pollen grain can be survived for a longer period of time. Okay, so that's the main reason why the pollen grains, they can survive for longer period of time. Because still now there is no enzymes which are being identified that can actually degrade the sporopollenin. Very important. Okay, so no enzymes can degrade the sporopollenin. In the pollen grains, we have a germ pole. A small, minute pores can be absorbed. We normally call them as germ pole, where the sporopollenin is absent. So in the germ pole, again, this is very important. Just concentrate and listen carefully. Okay. So the germ pole is a region in the pollen grain where you won't see the presence of the sporopollenin. Again, there is a disadvantage. Like I told, what gives the pollen grains to survive for a longer period of time because the outer layer is made up of sporopollenin. But it doesn't covers the entire. In the outer layer itself, there is a minute tiny pores called germ pores, and where this sporopollenin is absent. Okay. The next one is the inner layer, which is called as intin. The inner layer is called as intin. So inner wall of the pollen grain, okay, which is thin and it contains a continuous layer which is actually made up of the cellulose as well as the pectin. This is again very important. Thin intin is very thin and made a continuous layer which is made up of the cellulose as well as the pectin. Then the cytoplasm of this pollen grain is actually surrounded by the plasma membrane in the intin region. So in the intin, especially when I'm talking about the matured pollen grain, so intin it contains two cells now. Okay. So what are that? One is vegetative cell. Can you see here? So one is the vegetative cell and the another one is the generative cell. Okay. The outer large cell that you are seeing is the vegetative cell and the another cell that you are seeing here, the smaller one is the generative cell. So what exactly is about the vegetative and generative cell? See, in the vegetative cell, okay, it is bigger, as you can observe here, it is somewhat bigger, and it is abundant in the food material. That is, it has a reserved food material. It is abundant with the reserved food material, and it is large. That is clear. But when I'm talking about the nucleus, students, okay, in what kind of structure you can see the nucleus? They're irregular shaped nucleus. So where you will find them in the vegetative cell. So vegetative cell, it is bigger, has abundant food reserve, and large, irregularly shaped nucleus can be absorbed. Whereas coming to the generative cell, you can see here that they are small. The generative cell is actually small, and it flows in the cytoplasm of this vegetative cell. It flows in the cytoplasm of this vegetative cell. So here you can actually see the spindle shaped with dense cytoplasm, and a nucleus can be absorbed. So it is spindle shaped dense cytoplasm can be absorbed, and nucleus can also be absorbed in the generative cell. So you should know the difference between the vegetative and generative cell. So once you know, that will help you to understand the concept. This is actually what I can call the general way of understanding the pollen grain. But not but each pollen grain has its own advantages and disadvantages. Coming to the disadvantages, some of the species or many species of the pollen grain may cause such allergic reactions in the human beings, animals, and all. Say, several allergical reactions or allergies and bronchial affections or inflammations can be occurred because of the inhalation of this pollen grains. So this could lead to what? Chronic respiratory disorders. So pollen grains, inhalation of pollen grains, and some organisms, some human beings, that causes what? Chronic respiratory disorder. So that leads to asthma, bronchitis, right? So some of the example of this pollen grains are Parthenium or carrot gas. So Parthenium or carrot grass. So there is a story here. The Parthenium or carrot grass that actually came in India as a what do you say that? It came in India as a through imported wheat. Okay, it came in India through the imported wheat. So as an containment with imported wheat. So that's the only reason why we also call it as what do you say that? The Congress plan, something like that. So when we were during some flood and shortage of food, when we imported the wheat from the foreign countries, so with that it was being contaminated, and this Parthenium was introduced in India through that. Clear to you? So this was all about disadvantages. But not every pollen grains has disadvantages, right? There are certain advantages, like as we know, it has a reserved food material. So it will be the pollen grains are actually rich in the nutrients. Therefore, in many of the foreign country and even in India, we normally use this pollen tablets as a food supplements in the form of tablets or in the form of syrup. Then pollen consumption has also been claimed to increase the performance of athletics and race horse. So this is also one way where they consuming of the pollen grain, as they claim that it increases the performance of the athletics as well as horse during the horse race. So over a period of time, the pollen grains, once they are shed, right? So once they are being shed, so it has to land on the stigma, like it has to land on stigma before it loses or before it lose its viability, right? So before it lose its viability, if they have to bring up the fertilization or fertility, so it has to immediately go and land on the stigma before it lose its viability. So now the question mark is how long the viability of the pollen grain Is. So that is the question mark, right? So again, it depends or differs from species to species. For example, it also depends from species to species, and it also depends on the temperature, then humidity. Okay, in some cereals, like such as rice and wheat. Okay, the pollen grains viability is within 30 minutes after release of the pollen grains. Okay, after the release of the pollen grains. And in some species like, or in some members like Rosaceae or Leguminosae or Solanaceae. So here what you can expect is the viability is for months. Viability is for months. So this is how the viability of the pollen grains differs from species to species. So there is another saying like we can preserve this pollen grains actually. So we can also preserve a large number of pollen grains just like we preserve our semen, right? The same way. So they are being preserved for many years, species for years in liquid nitrogen around 196 degrees Celsius. So we can also call them as pollen bank, where you will find them just like pollen seed bank you have, right? In the same way, pollen banks are also there in few countries that have been initiated. So we will try to know some questions on this very simple topic. That is, first thing, pollen grains is also called as microspore, right? If you know the structure of the pollen grain before how pollen grains develop and all, you will get to know. That's a very easy question. So same, what I'm saying, easy questions, easy concepts will be asked. So because the pollen grain or microspore is the first cell of the male gametophyte that represents what? Immature male gametophyte, right? So they are made light in nature to make it possible for easy transportation. That means it has to transport from one plant to the another, from anther to the stigma. So it is made very lightweight in nature itself so that it makes it possible for easy transportation. So what is the second question now? Pollen viability is. Viability, just now I have discussed. Why viability of the pollen grain is very important? Right. Ability to germinate, because for germination, viability is important. So if the pollen grains loses its viability, what happens? So it will also lose the ability to germinate. Just now I have discussed. Pollen viability is the period in which the pollen grains can germinate cool. So they vary from species to species. For example, in rice and wheat, right, as I told, the viability is 30 minutes, while in other plants, they may last for few hours to days or even for months. Cool. So this is some of the concepts regarding the pollen grains, and I'll be uploading the another video where I'll be actually talking about the pollination. What are pollination? Then kinds of pollination and agents for pollination. So this is very important concept. Okay. So because most of the statement kind of questions arises from this topic. So before getting into pollination, we need to understand the basic structure of pollen grains. That's why this video is very important. And then we can easily move on to this topic, that is the pollination, kinds of pollination and agents of pollination. Thank you.